and I started performing back in 1974. We had a vision that one day our music would be heard around the world while people eat Mexican food in a restaurant. Rock on beef to stardom. Take your silver spoonful of beans and rice. So the next time you're craving a little Stevie Nicks music or a vegetable burrito, don't forget there's a special place for people just like you.
Hi-yo, it's me, Io, the popcorn philosopher. Welcome back to my channel, and welcome to the first edition to Final Friday Feud.
You got it!
Not Family Feud. Is that you, Steve Harvey? No, this is based on the Ryan Murphy show, Feud, the one he did with Joan Crawford and Betty Davis. That was supposed to be a yearly series that never came through, and I was so disappointed by that. So I thought I'd do it on my own. Why not? I thought I'd go my own way. Anyway, most of the time this will happen to be on the last Friday of the month, but I'm a little late this month. Oh, wait. You know what I mean. I mean, that would be a gosh darn miracle. Sorry this one was so late. It's gonna be a long one, which is the reason why I'm late. It took me quite a while to put this together, but I promise it's going to be a fascinating journey. So get your snacks and your drinks and your comfy pillow and whatever you need to get all comfy. This promises to be a fun journey. This is kind of like an offshoot of my Star-Crossed Lover series. Actually, tonight's subjects, were going to be on an episode of Star-Crossed Lovers, but I changed my mind. I kind of feel like they were more adversaries in a way and they always have been. But I'll explain more on that later. And since you probably knew from the title, I'm talking about Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. And I've been wanting to cover these two one way or another. One way or another. One way or another. Since Lindsay was fired from, I was going to say Buckingham Nicks. Wow, that was a Freudian slip. What I meant to say was he was fired from Fleetwood Mac. It was really upsetting to me the way a lot of people were tearing into Stevie, making it out to only be her fault. You know how people are looking back at the way Britney Spears was treated in the media and among the public and realizing that the way she was being treated was really wrong? The same thing with Janet Jackson and how I wish they would also look at Madonna. Well, that didn't just start with them. Stevie has had to do that same dance that all female artists, and I would say all women with power, have had to dance. In order to be seen for who she is, she couldn't just be herself, which seems counterintuitive, but she does it better than anyone I know. She had to dance that dance to not be seen as a bitch or a slut or an ambitious woman with no talent. All the pits and traps that women get stuck in. But I also don't want to bash Lindsay either. As many of the things that I'm angry at him for, there are just as many wonderful things that he's done. So I'm going to try to make this as balanced as I can. But it seems that they were just tearing into Stevie without knowing the whole story. Though at this point, I feel like, doesn't everyone at least know a little bit of the story? I mean, it's legend at this point. Like some old famous ballad, like the Ballad of Stevie and Lindsey. But I don't know, most people don't know the whole story, so let's talk about it. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Every episode I do my makeup while I tell the story, and every episode I also try out a different makeup tip. And tonight's makeup tip happens to be from Alexandra Anelli. I think that's how you say her name. And it's soap brows. I had never tried it before, and I learned it from her, although I think there's other places that also talk about soap brows, but I learned it from her, specifically using Dr. Bronner's soap instead of using brow gel. And so I'm trying that out tonight. Anyway, on to Stevie and Lindsey. Stephanie Stevie Nicks was born at Good Samaritan Hospital in Phoenix to Jess and Barbara Nicks. Nicks is of German, English, and Irish ancestry, which is kind of crazy because I always thought she was Latina a little bit, at least a little bit. But Nick's grandfather, Aaron Jess A.J. Nicks Sr., taught Nicks to sing duets with him by the time she was 4 years old. Nick's mother was very protective, keeping her at home more than most people, she said, and fostered in her daughter a love of fairy tales. And you can definitely see that. As a toddler, Stephanie could pronounce her own name only as TD, which led to her nickname of Stevie. Her father's frequent relocation as the president of Greyhound had the family living in Phoenix, Arizona, Albuquerque, New Mexico, El Paso, Texas, Salt Lake City, Utah, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. With the Goya guitar she received for her 16th birthday, Nicks wrote her first song titled I've Loved and I've Lost and I'm Sad, but I'm Blue. Wait, let me say it again. I've loved and I've lost and I'm sad but not blue. That's the name of it. Wow, that's a mouthful. It's a really long song title. She spent her adolescence playing records constantly and lived in her own little musical world. Boy, do I relate to that. While attending Arcadia High School in Arcadia, California, she joined her first band, The Changing Times, a folk rock group focused on vocal harmonies. The Changing Times sounds like so of the time. Sounds very like peace, man, love, but wouldn't it have been amazing to be in those times? Jeez, I think it would be like so great. Even if it didn't really afford any change, you know, it still would have been nice to have everyone kind of invested in peace. You know what I mean? Stevie met her future and musical partner, Lindsey Buckingham, during her senior year at Menlo Atherton High School in Atherton, California. I think that's a very affluent area, if I'm not mistaken. When she saw Lindsay playing California Dreamin' at Young Life Club, which I think is a religious, I looked it up, I think it's a religious group or something, like a religious youth group. But when she saw Buckingham playing California Dreaming at the club, she joined with him in harmony. She recalled, "I thought he was a darling." Buckingham was in a psychedelic rock band, Fritz, but two of its musicians were leaving for college. Lindsay Adams Buckingham was born on October 3rd, 1949, in Palo Alto, California, to Ruthita and Morris Buckingham. He had two older brothers, Jeffrey and Gregory. Growing up in the San Francisco Bay Area community of Atherton, he attended Menlo Atherton High School, where Buckingham and his brothers were encouraged to swim competitively. I wonder if he still does a lot of laps and stuff. I hear that's really good for you. I should swim more. I'm actually a really good swimmer. Although Lindsay dropped out of athletics to pursue music, his brother Gregory went on to win, a silver medal at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Wow. Wow, talk about accomplished family, huh? Lindsay attended San Jose State University but did not graduate. Lindsay's first forays into guitar playing took place on a toy Mickey Mouse guitar, playing along to his brother Jeff's extensive collection of 45s. Noticing his talent, Buckingham's parents bought their son a $35 harmony guitar. Wow, I'm almost out of this powder. Jeez. By the way, this is great powder. This is number 7 triple action finishing powder. This stuff is great. I love this stuff. Lindsay never took guitar lessons and does not read music, but by the age 13, he became interested in folk music and influenced by banjo methods practiced in an energetic style of the Kingston Trio, which you can definitely hear. I mean, think Big Love. I mean, you can easily hear that being played on the banjo. You know, actually, Lindsay doesn't get enough credit for blending all these interesting and disparate musical styles. He really created something really original and interesting. You know, you can hear it especially on Gypsy and Silver Springs. Those are really interesting elements. And Secondhand News, too, they has kind of Irish elements as well. Anyway, from 1966 to 1971, Buckingham performed psychedelic and folk rock with the high school rock band originally named the Fritz Rabine Memorial Band. Wow, what a mouthful that is. I can see why they dropped the rest of it. Sounds like rabies. The Fritz Rabbit Band. But interesting, yeah, he played bassist and was vocalist. That's interesting, he wasn't guitarist. But the band regrouped in 1967 due to band member changes and shortened their name to Fritz, thank God. Buckingham invited Stevie Nicks to join Fritz as a second vocalist. So he asked her in mid-1967 to replace the lead singer. Fritz later opened for Jimi Hendrix and Janis Joplin from 1968 until 1970. And Stevie credits the acts as having inspired her stage intensity and performance. Both Nicks and Buckingham attended San Jose State University, where Stevie majored in speech communication and planned to become an English teacher. With her father's blessing, Stevie dropped out of college to pursue a musical career with Lindsay, and their romantic relationship began after both left Fritz 5 years later. So you see, romance was never first and foremost with them. I think they only got together because they both shared this incredible dream. And they both were incredibly ambitious. And having broken up in Fritz, they probably figured Fritz was going to be their ticket to stardom. And having it all fall apart, I mean, they probably were both at a loss. You know, I've been through this before with bands. You think it's all gonna work out, and then it just doesn't. And then you're left with all this music and all this work that you put into it. And then all of a sudden it's over. It's so disheartening. And it can leave you feeling like very lost. But I'm sure that having this shared experience together probably drove them together. And that it was probably just them against the world. And Stevie describes this experience of them being adrift. And they needed some way to make money. So Stevie took it upon herself to have different jobs, waitressing jobs, cleaning jobs, while Lindsay stayed at home and worked on their music. So, you know, so much is made of Lindsay bringing Stevie into Fleetwood Mac, but very little is made of Stevie supporting them for a very long time. She had to have a lot of faith in him to support him that way. I don't know if I could have done that. I'd have been like, get a job! But thankfully she did, because then we wouldn't have all the great music. So Lindsay and Stevie recorded 7 demos in 1972 on a 1/2-inch 4-track Ampex recorder that he kept at his father's coffee roasting plant in Daly City. By the way, I think they must have really both been very well off growing up, because his dad owned a very successful coffee roasting plant, and Stevie's dad was the president of Greyhound, so I never knew that. I was in this band. We used to practice at my friend's painting warehouse. And we used to record there and rehearse and everything like that. And it was almost in the same area. Oh, wait, no. Burlingame. Never mind. Well, close enough. They drove to Los Angeles to pursue a record deal. Polydor Records signed the pair, and their album was produced by Keith Olsen and second engineer Richard Dashit. And they later actually worked on, of course, all of Fleetwood Mac stuff. Did I go a little far on the blush today? Maybe. Well, I'm going for 80s blush today. See, you just gotta own it, right? Buckingham Nicks was released in September 1973, and it was during the photo shoot for this album that the first real betrayal happened by Lindsay. Well, I mean, there could have been earlier ones, but it's the first one that I know about. Stevie had bought a beautiful blouse to be worn for the cover shoot, and she was so excited by the photo shoot that she thought it was going to be like the visual element of the album that they'd worked so hard to create. But that soon soured when Stevie was encouraged, and I say encouraged in quotation marks, to take off her blouse and to do it topless. Stevie was incredibly upset by this, and she was very young and very naive, but she knew that this was not what she wanted to do, and this was not the message she wanted to put across. But Lindsay really browbeat her and really shamed her into doing it, apparently calling her an idiot and not having an artistic vision. I mean, this was art, and this was artistic expression, and that she was being a baby by not doing it. So she finally relented, and it was something that she really regretted for many years after that, because that picture went around forever. I mean, that picture is everywhere on the internet still to this day. Pictures last forever. Okay, so I'm going to try this soap brow trick. Here's my trusty Dr. Bronner soap. It's unscented, but it still has a scent. Must be the natural scent, hopefully. Anyway, so I don't even know how much you put on here, but I'll just guess at it, I guess. I did watch her video a long time ago, but I probably should have watched it again, but I forgot. I don't want to like push them up like she does, because that's not my goal. My goal is just to calm my brows down. These ones don't want to lay down. If you know if I'm doing this wrong, maybe you guys can let me know in the comments what I'm doing wrong, because it doesn't want to lay down. Maybe my eyebrow is too crazy for this trick. But, you know, the photo shoot did in fact go down to encourage her own sense of style and nail down the fact that she would never use that really obvious sexuality to sell her music. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you have to be true to yourself, you know? And that just wasn't something that she was comfortable with. And Lindsay really should have respected that. He should not have shamed Stevie into doing it. And it was all for naught anyway. Soon after the release, Polydor dropped them due to the album having low sales. And you can kind of see why, because the songs, although they're very good, they weren't as focused as their music would eventually be. They weren't as poppy as they would eventually be also. They weren't like the big hits, you know what I mean? But with no money coming in from their album and Buckingham contracting mononucleosis shortly after, I've had that before. That was not fun. But thereafter, Nicks began working multiple jobs, and this is where she began using cocaine. She said, "We were told that it was recreational and that it wasn't dangerous." Yeah, I guess things were just very different back then. That's what Stevie told Chris Isaac in 2009. While living with Dashit, Buckingham landed a guitar role with the Everly Brothers' 1972 tour, and Nicks stayed behind working on her songwriting by herself. And this is that famous story about when she was recording in Aspen. She was staying at a friend's house in Aspen. That's where she wrote Rhiannon and Landslide from. I guess you can definitely see where she got the lyrics for Landslide. Looking at Aspen's, glacierous, snow-bedecked mountains. So Nicks wrote Rhiannon after seeing the name in the novel Triad by Mary Letter. She also wrote Landslide inspired by the scenery of Aspen and of her slowly deteriorating relationship with Lindsay.
I dedicated myself to witchcraft and Lindsey Buckingham and cocaine. But now I use that same energy and dedication to bring you an affordable dining experience you'll never forget. Chicken fajitas taste real fine. Wouldn't you love to eat them? My chips and salsa are mighty fine. No one around here can beat them. You placed an order, I wrote it down. Enchiladas, the best in town. And then I saw my reflection in the big pile of nachos till a landslide brought it down.
Stevie Nicks Fajito Roundup off Interstate 17, just 2 hours north of Phoenix. Every Tuesday, burritos start at $2.99.
The brow powder doesn't go on very well over the soap. So it's kind of making it hard to do my eyebrows. Of the songs that she wrote, it was really knocking on doors that really talked about how unsure the future looked at that point for Stevie. So let's hear a little of that. I hope I don't get copyrighted, but let's hear a little of that. I'll play the demo.
I'm tired of knocking on doors when there's nobody there. I'm tired of knocking on doors when there's nobody there. And the time keeps going on by, and I wonder what is to become of me. And I'm unsure, I can't see my way. And he says, lady, you don't have to see. And the time keeps going on by, and I wonder what is to become of me. And I'm unsure, I can't see my way. He says, lady, you don't have to see. And he says, lady, you don't have to see.
Isn't that song beautiful? I just love that song. But it was really Rhiannon and Landslide that were really the breakthrough for Stevie. This is where she really hit upon her style as an artist and as a songwriter. That would be the music that would propel her when she joined Fleetwood Mac. In late 1974, Keith Olsen played the Buckingham Nicks track Frozen Love for drummer Mick Fleetwood, who had come to Sound City in California to search for a recording studio. And Fleetwood remembered Buckingham's guitar work when guitarist Bob Welch departed to pursue a solo career. On December 31st, 1974, oh wow, I never knew it was on New Year's, Fleetwood called Buckingham, inviting him to join the band. Buckingham refused, insisting Nicks and him were a package deal, and he would not join without her. But yeah, it's very true. If we didn't have Lindsey Buckingham sticking up for Stevie, we probably wouldn't have Stevie Nicks, at least not as we know her. Not only because of joining Fleetwood Mac, but also because Lindsay's arranging of Stevie songs is just incredible. He is definitely her best collaborator. But I do think that he overstates it sometimes. He makes it out like she would be nothing without him, and I don't think that that's true. Stevie is very talented on her own. But over the years, Lindsay has very much belittled her and really driven it into her that this was true. But you know, she's made a lot of great music without Lindsay. I mean, that's why she's in the Hall of Fame twice. And it's really sad because you can kind of see that the years and years of her being told this by Lindsay, it's really taken a toll on her, and you can kind of see her overdoing it when it comes to her stating Lindsay's genius. She really does champion Lindsay a lot, and rightly so, because he's an amazing artist and he's an amazing musician. I think she does this at the cost of her own genius, you know? Because even though Lindsay is a genius, Stevie is a genius in her own right. It's just a different kind. But you can see her reverence for him when she talks about certain artists like Harry Styles, or what was that one guy from American Idol? I forget his name. She mentored him one time. But she kind of thinks of them as the new Lindsey Buckingham, you know, that kind of genius. And I'm not sure if she realized, I hope she realizes that she has her own genius. I'm overstating the word genius, sorry. I'm kind of overusing the word genius, my God. Anyway. As for the joining of the pair, the decision went to Kristen McPhee. Since she was the other woman in the group, it was her choice. The rest of the group left it up to her. So when they actually met, her and Stevie became an instant sister. The group decided that incorporating the pair would improve Fleetwood Mac, making the British band into an Anglo-American band. The first rehearsals confirmed this feeling, with the harmonies of the newcomers adding a pop accessibility to the band's former style of blues-based rock. In 1975, Fleetwood Mac achieved worldwide success with the album Fleetwood Mac, the self-titled album. Nicks' Rhiannon was voted one of the 500 greatest songs of all time by Rolling Stone. Her live performance of the song throughout the decade began to take on a theatrical intensity that wasn't present on the record. The song built to a climax to which Nick's vocals were so impassioned that Mick Fleetwood declared her Rhiannon in those days was like an exorcism. And I just saw The Exorcist recently, so I can just imagine that. I wish I could have been there. And then Landslide became another hit from the album, with 3 million radio airplays. Becoming aware of her image as a performer, Nicks worked with clothing designer Margie Kent to develop a unique onstage look. Her costumes had a gypsy bohemian style. I think we all know the famous Stevie style with, you know, flowing skirts and shawls and platform boots and, you know, all of that. Lots of black, lots of lace, and of course the famous top hat. It's an iconic style. Whenever anyone says it's a kind of Stevie Nicks style, everyone knows what that is. But this is another way that Lindsay wore Stevie down over the years. According to Storms, the book by Lindsay's ex-girlfriend Carol Ann Harris, Lindsay often made fun of Stevie for her stage costumes and did so mercilessly. Actually, it wasn't just Lindsay, it was really most of the band. They felt that she was being too showboaty, and they often laughed at her when she would come up with whatever outfit she was going to wear for that night. And over the years, Lindsay's also minimized her solo success. Why he hasn't had as much of a success in terms of his solo work is because of her style, her marketing herself. And that's the only reason why she has a solo success. And that he didn't have the whole gypsy thing to sell his music. But that's part of being an artist. That's having artistic vision, putting things together in a holistic way to make people feel something, you know? But the way Lindsay puts it is to minimize her accomplishment. And there's no doubt that Lindsay has musical vision. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But actually, I like a lot of Lindsay's solo music. But you know, that's why shows like The Voice don't have a lot of successes in terms of artists becoming huge, famous artists. It's because in order to be an artist, you have to have the whole package, something compelling in addition to like virtuosic talent. And I do think people prize virtuosic talent over anything else. Like it's the only way to be talented, but there's so many ways to be talented. And that's why people minimize artists like Madonna, like Britney, and even Stevie, because Stevie doesn't play any one instrument very well. She often doesn't get the respect that Lindsay and the rest of the band gets. I do think Lindsay's jealous of her, when he really shouldn't be, because they're both talented in their own ways. And why can't they just be that and just celebrate who each other is? I do think Stevie celebrates Lindsay. It's just not vice versa. I was looking through my old comments on YouTube, trying to find videos that would support some of my arguments here for this video. And I found some, but some of them were missing, of course. There was one I couldn't find. It was Fleetwood Mac in the recording studio. It was like kind of like a behind the scenes look. And it was actually very like a long video. It was just like them for like a long period of time, just not talking. But there was one part where Stevie was trying to relay her opinion, and everyone is just ignoring her. And you could see the exasperation in her eyes. She just kind of stays quiet because she knows that they're just not going to listen to her. Because I don't think they respect her as a musician, even though I think that deep down Lindsay really does. And the proof of that is when they were making this album, the Fleetwood Mac original album, of all the songs he could have chosen of his own, which song did he choose? He chose Stevie's Crystal. And I love his rendition of Crystal, actually. It's one of his most vulnerable moments, I think. He's way more vulnerable on that song than he is on his own songs. Not to mention some of his best, most inventive guitar work is on Stevie's songs. Actually, if you think like Silver Springs or Gypsy, which takes guitar to a whole new place, it doesn't even sound like guitar in some places. I think in a way, sometimes Lindsay wishes he didn't do this for her even. That maybe that's what made her a star. His work on her songs. And he even said in interviews that there were times when they were fighting that he felt like he didn't want to help her with the arrangements of her songs. But I do believe it's because of his appreciation of Stevie's songwriting talent that he wanted to do this. He was inspired to do that. And the world is better for it. I don't know what my life would be without it. What would my life be without that? I mean, I guess I would still be around, but my life would just be that much less brilliant, you know? Which brings me to the point about songwriting credits. I mean, what do you think? Do you think Lindsey Buckingham would feel less bent out of shape or feel less bitter about Stevie's success if he had songwriting credit on her songs that he arranged? I mean, this is a really hard one to say, and I'm on the borderline about it. I mean, whether it's even fair. I mean, if it were in today's terms, he probably would absolutely get songwriting credit. These days, if you make a drum beat for a song, you can get songwriting credit. Although I just don't think that that's right. While Stevie and Lindsay achieved professional success with Fleetwood Mac, their personal relationship was eroding. Nicks ended the relationship in early 1976, right before Fleetwood Mac began recording their follow-up album, Rumors, which continued until late 1976. I think it's probably pretty much legend at this point, and most people know what an incredibly challenging time making Rumors was. Putting aside their differences and their breakup to create music, and it was Mick Fleetwood's idea to put all the turmoil into music, kind of using the songs as their therapy almost. Because of course, Christy McVie and John McVie were also going through the same thing. But songs like Go Your Own Way further exacerbated Stevie's feelings towards Lindsay, as Dreams and Silver Springs were much kinder towards Lindsay. It took Stevie a long time to forgive him for making her sing some of the backup vocals she had to sing on Go Your Own Way that was basically a kiss-off to her. And there were a lot of nights where a drunken Lindsay would come to the house where Stevie was staying, screaming at her door, so much so that the neighbors sometimes would call the police. And it took a long time for him to forgive her for breaking up with him. I do think he tortured her for it. But honestly, I don't think that they were meant to be, not in that way. But as musical partners, they were perfectly meant to be. I guess if there weren't romantic partners, it would never probably have happened in the same way. And there's a lot of reports of Lindsay being physically abusive with Stevie, particularly in the studio. I mean, Lindsay comes across as a really calm guy, but apparently he's a real hothead. And the whole band is a little bit scared of him because of his temper. It's reported in several biographies, including the one I mentioned earlier, Storms, by his ex-girlfriend, who was there for all of this because she was trying to be a sound engineer at the time, and she worked in the studio that they were recording in, and that's how they met each other. And she witnessed him hitting Stevie, and he would also later hit her as well. So yeah, he has a whole history of hitting women, which really just gives me the lowest possible opinion of him, because I had a stepdad who used to hit my mom. And me. And my grandmother would always say to him, yeah, you're a real brave one for hitting someone who's that vulnerable. So anyway, so that's a real trigger for me. I mean, just don't hit your partner. It's just not okay. And if you are being abused, I know how hard it is to leave, but there are places that you can go and people who will help. I'm going to go ahead and list some of them in the description. Another betrayal came in while they were recording Rumors. Stevie recorded the song Silver Springs, which she had given to her mother as a gift. The song was actually about her and Lindsay, though. They were driving by Silver Springs, Maryland, and she just thought the sound of Silver Springs had such a beautiful ring to it. So she thought it would be this beautiful, wonderful place, which actually, really no offense to Silver Springs, but it's really more of an ordinary place, honestly. It's really no more beautiful than any other suburb or whatever. But it was the idea of this beautiful place that you could be my beautiful place that I go to. That was what the whole meaning was behind the song. That they could have created this beautiful place together, but it was just not to be, you know. And since Stevie did break things off, I wonder if that was part of the reason why Lindsay voted to cut the song. I mean, maybe there was more incentive for that reason, because that's exactly what happened. They conspired behind her back to remove the song because they didn't want too many slow songs on the album. And they voted to put instead I Don't Want to Know, the song I Don't Want to Know. But studio engineer and co-producer Ken Calais said that Nicks was very unhappy to find that the band had decided to go against the song Silver Springs, which he said was beautifully crafted and carried some of the band's best guitar work. Silver Springs, he said, it was one of the most beautiful songs ever not put on an album, but it was released as a B-side to the Go Your Own Way single, Lindsay's equally critical song about Stevie. Copies of the single eventually became collector's items, though, among fans of Fleetwood Mac. To add insult to injury, later when Stevie tried to have the song for her Time and Space Greatest Hits album, Mick Fleetwood refused because he wanted to put the song on the Fleetwood Mac box set instead, which is actually where I heard it sometime like in the mid-90s. And I was so blown away with the song because being a fan of Stevie and Fleetwood Mac, I had never heard it before. And I'm like, wow, where did this amazing song come from? Along with the song Paper Doll, which is actually also very good too. But especially Silver Springs is such an incredible song. I was like, wow, where did this come from? But it was really maddening to her that they were not going to allow her to put it on the album, but also they weren't going to allow her to use it on her own solo album. They didn't want it to begin with, so now they weren't going to let her use it for her greatest hits. She felt it was ridiculous. Especially since her mother had opened a store called Silver Springs, which I believe is a fan store, if I'm not mistaken. But the fact that he didn't allow her to use it on her greatest hits, the name of the store didn't make any sense. And this caused Stevie to quit the band for a time in the early 1990s. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Fleetwood Mac's second album, after the incorporation of Nicks and Buckingham, was the best-selling album in 1977, and as of 2017 has sold over 45 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling albums of all time. As most people know, the album remained at number 1 on the American charts for 31 weeks and reached number 1 in other countries. The album won the Grammy Award for Album of the Year in 1978, and it produced U.S. Billboard Hot 100 Top 10 singles, with Nick's Dreams being the band's only Billboard Hot 100 number 1 hit. I was interested to know that that was their only number 1 hit. I had no idea.
Now there you go again, you say you want burritos. I sure hope you can keep them down. It's only a flower for tea, you could ask her I don't need now. Have you anything you'd like to share? Is the loneliness when we
So this is where Stevie's big mistake came in. In November 1977, after a New Zealand concert on the Rumors tour, Stevie and Mick Fleetwood secretly began an affair. Fleetwood was married to Jenny Boyd. Never in a million years could you have told me that that would happen, Nicks has stated. Everybody was angry because Mick was married to a wonderful girl and had 2 wonderful children, and I was horrified. I loved these people. I loved his family. So it couldn't possibly work out, and it didn't. I just couldn't. And not only that, but I'm sure that must have been horrible for Lindsay. And I'm not sure how he felt, but I'm sure it must have been awful. I mean, of all people to date, that has to be one of the worst possible choices. But we all make mistakes, of course. And that was definitely a big mistake. I certainly have made really horrible mistakes in my life. But that definitely was a rough one. But Nicks ended the affair soon after it began. She has stated that had the affair progressed, it would have been the end of Fleetwood Mac. And I probably think that was probably pretty true. By October 1978, Mick Fleetwood had left Boyd, though, for Nicks' best friend, Sarah Ricord, who I believe is the namesake of the song Sarah. I think the song is also believed to be about Stevie's unborn child that would have been fathered by Don Henley, but I don't know if that's for sure true or not. After the success of the Rumours album and tour in 1977 to 1978, Fleetwood Mac began recording their third album with Nicks and Buckingham called Tusk in the spring of 1978. By this time, Stevie had amassed a large backlog of songs that she had been unable to record with Fleetwood Mac. Nicks wrote and recorded demos for a solo project during the Tusk sessions in 1979 and the Tusk World Tour of 1979 through 1980. Nicks, Danny Goldberg, and Paul Fishkin founded Modern Records to record and release Stevie's material. But Tusk was released on October 19, 1979. Mirage was recorded in 1981 and early 1982. When Stevie told Lindsay about the solo album, this became one of their biggest non-relationship fights. Even though Stevie said she had no intention of leaving the band, she just wanted to be able to place her extra songs that she had, since she was only allowed 3 to 4 songs per album on a Fleetwood Mac album. And she was a very prolific songwriter, so she had all this huge backlog of songs. She just wanted to have an extra place to put them. Things went further downhill during their 1980 Tusk tour. At a concert in Wellington, New Zealand, Buckingham tried to trip Stevie on stage, began imitating her moves, while Nicks was singing Rhiannon. He stopped playing and attempted to kick her. I wonder if there was video of this, but I couldn't find it. The rest of the band was shocked, but only singer Christine McVie confronted him about it. Buckingham, who reportedly never apologized, has stated that he doesn't even remember the incident. Conveniently. Apparently, she would grit her teeth as she and Buckingham would pretend to kiss after performing Landslide every night on tour, and I don't blame her. Stevie's first solo album, Belladonna, was released on July 27, 1981 to critical and commercial acclaim, reaching number 1 on the Billboard 200 chart with 4 singles, making the Billboard Hot 100, and Rolling Stone deeming her the reigning queen of rock and roll. Stevie, who was furiously proud of her album, gave Lindsay a copy, but he kicked it across the room, which is so hypocritical because he himself released a solo album. In 1981, Buckingham released his first solo album, Law and Order, playing nearly every instrument and featuring guest appearances by his bandmates, Mick Fleetwood and Kristen McVie. Of course, no Stevie. The album pursued the quirky, eclectic, often lo-fi and new wave influences of Tusk and spawned the single Trouble, which was inspired by Richard Dashit and which reached number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 and number 1 in Australia for 3 weeks. And I actually really love that song, actually. It's a really good song, and I think it should be remembered more, honestly. And there are a few songs on Law & Order that I really like. But Law & Order overall is a very mediocre album. It feels very unfinished. I mean, most of the songs feel like demos. And I think that Lindsay was very arrogant about it. I think he just thought he had so many chances because of the band that he was in. I know that Lindsay couldn't have worked as hard as he could on that album. And I think if he had set himself up for a better solo career, he probably would have a better solo career. Where you can tell Stevie, she really gave it everything she had. She gave everything she had to make it to the making of Belladonna. And it's a wonderful record all the way through. I mean, there's no bum tracks on the album. And it's easily her best album. And not only does it have great songs, but it also is a really complete musical statement. And it really holds up. It just shows you right there that having a virtuosic instrumental talent, that's not always the thing that's going to make great art and music. He's told Stevie over the years that her songs are nothing without him, but this just proves that that's not true. And it will continue to not be true, because she's had very many collaborators and has made great music with most of them. And maybe if he allowed Stevie to work on some of his own tracks, his songs would have been much better for it. But because of his arrogance, he probably would never allow that to happen. It's interesting, too, because he knows that Stevie's talented. Because you could see her songs are the things that inspire him the most and to his best guitar work. And his best production work as well. It's often Stevie's tracks that he does this even more than his own. And then the same holds true for the Kristen McVie songs on Tango in the Night. I think that it was her songs that inspired Lindsay to have that same amazing production and guitar work. Because her tracks on Tango in the Night were really great. Where unfortunately drugs would eventually overtake Stevie's creative process for a while. And Stevie has said that all of the bandmates of Fleetwood Mac have been drug addicts, but for a time, she was the worst of them all. This really became true during the making of that same album, Tango in the Night, where her best song is actually a song she didn't even write, Seven Wonders, which is still a great song. I love that song, which is still one of my favorite songs of hers, so, you know. But Stevie would have to go to rehab during the making of this album. Lindsay and the rest of the band refused to stop recording, so recording would go on while she was in rehab. And when she got out, she went to finish recording her material. She eventually heard the final version of the album. She was upset to hear that she wasn't really present on a lot of the album. And Lindsay really pulled no punches and simply told her whose fault was that. You weren't around. So she would go and record some extra background vocals. But I have to say, Stevie does feel very separate from the rest of this album. No more apparent than on Little Lies. You know, you hear that part, tell me lies, tell me lies. That you could tell that part, it feels like that part was recorded later, doesn't it? I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about that. But that part where she goes, tell me lies, tell me lies. That part feels very separate to me. Actually, my aunt told me that a story about having met the band during this time, during the touring of this album. I guess her and a friend had climbed the fence after one of their shows and was able to get backstage, and she ended up getting to meet most of the band, but I think Lindsay wasn't present. And I think that's when Lindsay actually quit the band. But she did see Stevie Nicks, who she said she seemed really out of it, which kind of makes perfect sense time-wise, because this was around the time when they prescribed Klonopin for her. And that really was another thing that zapped her creativity for quite a few years. The horrors of psychiatry sometimes. I mean, sometimes it can be good, but other times... Speaking of the tour, Lindsay really wanted to delay touring even though the band was ready to go and wanted to tour to promote the album. Lindsay wanted to pause in order to, I think it was either promote his album or record his solo album. I can't remember which, but it was one of those. He wanted basically to delay. And this was not the first time he had held up the band, thinking that they would never tour without him. And it certainly wouldn't be the last time either. In fact, that was one of the reasons why he got fired later. I don't know this for sure, but I think this must have been a real burr in the saddle to Stevie after Lindsay had refused to even pause recording for Stevie to go to rehab. And now he wanted to postpone touring just because he had things he wanted to do, you know. I'm sure that must have made Stevie furious, and she did get very upset with him because during the heated argument in front of the band in 1987, according to Gold Dust Woman by Stephen Davis, he manhandled Stevie, slapped her face, and bent her backward over the hood of his car. He put his fingers around her neck and started to choke her. Nicks said, I thought he was going to kill me. This time her band stood up to him. He would not lay a hand on her again. And Buckingham's camp has never responded to requests for comment about this. I believe that's probably why he wasn't present on the tour. And I think that's why he was no longer in the band for the first time. Was he fired twice? I'm not sure. Was he fired twice? Or did he leave on that first time? I'm not sure. But time does heal all wounds, and over time, Nicks continued to reach out to Buckingham, asking him to produce and play guitar on her 1996 song Twisted. And they made temporary amends, at least enough to make the dance in 1997 a special for MTV, where Silver Springs finally got its due, becoming a surprise hit, a very unusual feat for a live song at the time. And one might argue that had it come out on Rumors, it might not have been a hit, since there's only so many singles that can come out, and there was such an embarrassment of riches on Rumors. But I do think it could be two things at once. It could be a betrayal, and it could also have been right in the long run. The armistice lasted long enough for another tour and a new album in 2003, Say You Will. But Lindsay's controlling nature still comes out during the making of that album. He just really couldn't help himself. And you can really see that even on his best behavior, he still can't help himself from not respecting her vision as a songwriter. Here's a clip of them from the making of the album, where she really gets fed up of all the years of being ignored and all the years of not being respected. She just won't stand for it anymore, and she really sticks up for herself. Here's that clip.
Be the two middle lines and the little thrown down. We can do those together, or I can do those by myself. And then I put a high falsetto harmony on the second thrown down. I mean the answer part.
All right.
Well, actually, this song, it was written on the last Fleetwood Mac tour, on the dance tour, and it was really in its own kind of strange way written about my relationship with Lindsay and how the barricades of time have always gotten in our way. And you know, at some point in your life you start to write on these things philosophically, and so Lindsay and I are like, you know, amazed that we can actually write stuff that is about each other and was about each other and means something to us now.
And it's odd sitting here singing all this stuff about myself, you know. It's you sort of learn to disassociate and to sort of be professional about it, but you know, it's pretty amazing, you know, all this time later, that there would still be those subjects being dealt with in a really deep manner. Well, I thought about the first verse, right? I thought if you put a couple of those things back into the tense and the person, it might, I don't know, it just might make it run, it might actually strengthen the narrative from the first to the second verse, that's all. When you say now you're going home, who are you talking about?
I'm talking to you.
But I'm saying if you put that in the third person and in the past tense, it hangs with the first verse more. A decision no one made, he was going home, you know? It's sort
well,
of...
then you'd have to say a now, because the now you're going home is so beautiful, it flows so beautifully. So you could say now he's going home.
Or now
or
he's
something.
Okay,
but you can't change that because it's beautiful.
I'm just saying that, you know, it's sort of a rule of thumb in writing that you don't shift your tense and your person.
Well, I don't think that you could say that to Bob Dylan, because he would say to you, I write what I want to.
Okay. I just thought it was, because it's not as abstract as what Bob Dylan would write in those situations. It's a fairly literal...
But it's the way I write.
Narrative thing.
It's
I just
the way
thought
I
it might
write.
help.
It's
Okay.
the way that it's the poet that I am. It's the way I write.
I just couldn't not bring it up because I thought it might help the whole strength of the running and the continuity. I didn't think it was a good idea not to bring it up.
Okay.
YouTube and the comments on this clip on YouTube are extremely telling. Seeing how many people just don't always understand the whole story of what it's like to be ignored and not respected. I couldn't help it. I had to voice my 2-bit opinion. And I was able to find the comment I made years ago. By the way, I encourage you to go back and look at your old YouTube comments. It's actually quite hilarious. Anyway, I just want to read you some of these comments to get a feel of what it's really like. How women artists really get dismissed when they stick up for themselves, or if they have even an ounce of confidence in what they do. Here's some of those comments. Thankfully, there are people who are supporting Stevie and there are people who are supporting Lindsay in this argument, but I just want to read you some of the stuff about Stevie because of the way I think that female musicians get treated. The only thing I have to add about this absurd debate on tense in relation to this documentary is who the F cares what Bob Dylan would say or think. I guarantee you he wouldn't give a rat's ass. Maybe, but he also maybe doesn't have to deal with what a female musician has to deal with in terms of respect. Stevie is no Bob Dylan. I do not approve of her treatment of Lindsay. The song was not a hit. Lindsay was right. I'm glad he's out of that mess. His ego was disgusting. Grow up. Stevie's acting like a spoiled brat. Her PR has gone to her head. No, she looked whiny and she's not Bob Dylan. There were more, but I'm just going to read you my comments. You are all missing the point. It has nothing to do with comparing herself with Bob Dylan, like better or worse. She's asking him to respect her as an artist. This comes after years of having her musical opinion disregarded often. I know this as a female musician who's been in bands with guys. and I recognize that patronizing way that some, and I not mean all, male band members talk to female band members. It's like, it's real cute that you have an opinion, but I know the real way you should do it. I have seen this in other videos, and you can see how exasperated Stevie gets when the boys don't listen to her. It's art. There are no rules. And guess what? It's Stevie's songs that are covered the most. So there. I guess I was kind of in my feelings. You can go ahead and read some of the other comments that people responded to me with, but I'm just going to read this one. She should be more open to suggestions instead of being so self-important. Lindsay isn't just her producer and arranger. He has known her and worked with her for decades. And the fact is that both Ken Kelly and Lindsay in several cases had to ask Stevie to remove verses because her songs were 14 minutes long. So of course, changing or shortening lyrics can also be part of a producer's job. One more before I go back to the video. This comment where I thought Lindsey Buckingham had responded to me. I'm like, oh, Lindsey Buckingham responded to me? Oh my God, but it was just spam. Anyway, you can see why over the next few years, their armistice slowly eroded. And they were back to really hating each other again. But then they made amends again in 2013, she said, and when he agreed to treat her with respect. But of course, Buckingham could no longer dismiss Stevie any longer. The band needed her talent and her fan base, which these days include young acts like Haim and Lana Del Rey, and more heritage acts like Sheryl Crow and Dixie Chicks, or the Chicks, or whatever they're called now. They needed her more than she needed them. And she had become an American legend. She would also be inducted for the second time in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as a solo artist, the very first woman to do this. Sadly. Not sad that she got inducted, but sad that she's the first woman. But that amends would end too. In August 2016, Fleetwood said that while the band has a huge amount of recorded music, virtually none of it features Stevie Nicks. Buckingham and Christy McVie, however, have contributed multiple songs to the new project. Fleetwood told Ultimate Classic Rock, McVie wrote up a storm. She and Lindsay could probably have a mighty strong duet album if they want. In truth, I hope it will come to more than that. There really are dozens of songs, and they're really very good. So we'll see. Buckingham and Christine McVie announced a new album titled Lindsey Buckingham and Christine McVie, which also features Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, but of course no Stevie. The album was originally planned as a Fleetwood Mac album, but Stevie Nicks did not participate due to her preference for a solo tour with the Pretenders. I remember that tour, actually. Lindsey Buckingham and Christy McVie was released on June 9th, 2017, and was preceded by the single In My World. A 38-date tour began on June 21st, 2017, and ended on November 16th. Following Fleetwood Mac's performance at the Music Cares Person of the Year in January 2018, Buckingham was fired from the band. The reason was said to have been a disagreement about the nature of the tour, and in particular the question of whether newer or less well-known material would be included, as Buckingham had wanted. Mick Fleetwood and the band appeared on CBS This Morning on April 25th, 2018, and said that Buckingham would not sign off on a tour that the group had been planning for a year, and that they would reach a huge impasse and hit a brick wall. When asked if Buckingham had been fired, he said, "Well, we don't use that word because we think it's ugly." He also said that Lindsay has huge amounts of respect and kudos to what he's done within the ranks of Fleetwood Mac, and always will. In October 2018, Buckingham filed a lawsuit against Fleetwood Mac for breach of fiduciary duty, breach of oral contract, and intentional interference with prospective economic advantage, among other charges. That was a mouthful. But the lawsuit was settled in December of the same year. Buckingham stated that he learned about the firing after receiving a call from Fleetwood Mac manager Irving Azoff with a message for Buckingham from Stevie Nicks. Buckingham stated that Azoff told him, "Stevie never wants to be on a stage with you again," according to Azoff. Nicks had also taken issue with, on the evening of Music Cares, the guitarist outburst just before the band set over the intro music, which was the studio recording of Nicks' Rhiannon, and the way that he smirked during Nicks's thank you speech, thinking that it was long-winded. Buckingham conceded that it wasn't about it being Rhiannon. It just undermined the impact of our entrance. That's me being very specific about the right and wrong way to do something. End quote. It was absolutely about it being Rhiannon. He's big time bitter about Stevie having so much success and it eclipsing his own. Can I blame him? I don't know. I mean, that's a tough one because I'm sure it must be a really bitter pill to swallow. I mean, considering his ego and all. I'm sure it must be a hard one, you know? I mean, especially considering he's told her year after year that she's nothing without him. I mean, would he be less bitter if he had writing credit on songs like Rhiannon? I mean, is that fair? I don't know. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? I'm really on the fence about that. Days later, Buckingham called Azoff and asked, is Stevie leaving the band or am I being kicked out? Azoff and told him he was indeed being ousted. Either way, former Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers guitarist Mike Campbell and Neil Finn of Crowded House were named to replace Buckingham. Of course, Buckingham has said that he would be open to rejoining Fleetwood Mac in the future. Through her publicist, she described Buckingham's recollection of the 2018's events as revisionist history. His version of events is actually inaccurate, as while I've never spoken publicly on the matter, it certainly feels like the time has come to shine a little bit of light on the truth, Nicks says. To be exceedingly clear, I did not have him fired. I did not ask for him to be fired. I did not demand he be fired. Frankly, I fired myself. I proactively removed myself from the band and a situation I considered to be toxic to my well-being. I was done. If the band went on without me, so be it. End quote. After this, there has been pettiness on both sides, honestly, and with Lindsay doing a counter interview, and then the band went on to Ellen to do a horrible version of The Chain. Although that might have been on the part of the mixing engineer, because you couldn't even hear John McVie's famous bass line. But it was pretty petty and kind of rough that they decided to perform that song of all songs. According to that book, Storms, whenever things got heated between the band members, Mick Fleetwood would begin playing the infamous drum part that starts The Chain, and all of the band members would stop arguing and go to their mic and begin to start singing the song. So not only were the lyrics about keeping the chain together, it really was a mantra for the band. So performing that specific song, I'm sure must have been like a real knife in the gut to Lindsay, and I'm sure that was probably exactly the point. And very recently, in September of this year, Lindsay opened up the wound yet again in the Los Angeles Times, talking about his firing. The article was filled with low blows to pretty much all of the bandmates, but especially Stevie. I forgot my lipstick. He does talk about how he complained at the Music Cares event and how he made a big deal about the song Rhiannon being played and that she felt like he mocked her during her speech. And his response to this was, quote, ironically, nothing went down that night that was as contentious as the stuff we'd been through for 43 years, end quote. He is so desensitized from these fights and jabs and barbs of disrespect that it's like he's saying, what? I've done so many fucked up things over the years. Why is this fucked up thing all of a sudden so bad? I mean, that's what it feels like he's saying. And this isn't even anyone else saying anything bad about him. These are his own words. His own words are making him look bad. Buckingham sued Fleetwood Mac for lost wages, and he got $12 to $14 million he claimed he would have made in the 2 months on the tour. Nicks has been reluctant to speak about the 2018 split, although in an interview with the Times last year, she would only say that it was a long time coming, and that being around Buckingham had made her feel very sad, like a dying flower all the time. That wasn't caused by me, Buckingham says, defending himself. You could do a whole analysis on Stevie at this point in her life and what she's allowed to happen and what she's allowed to slip away from her. Her creativity, for at least for a while, it seemed like she wasn't in touch with that. Same with the level of energy she once had on stage. I think that was hard for her, seeing me jump around in an age-inappropriate way. Also, she's very lonely. She's alone. She has the people who work for her, and I'm sure she has friends, but end quote. When Buckingham is reminded that Nicks has repeatedly asserted she chose to focus on her career over marriage and over children, he does not back down. He says, well, maybe she never did want that, but it doesn't mean that it doesn't make her feel alone as a result, And Lindsay knows full well what he's doing and what he's inferring, that she's old and all alone. And this is the thing that's held over women's heads constantly, not to mention the thing that is meant to just shut a woman up who's later in life and has made these decisions to focus on other things besides romantic relationships and children. Yes, those dreaded words meant to shut her up. You're old and alone. That's what he's really saying. Told of Buckingham's comments, Nicks now reiterates that though she was thrilled for Lindsay when he had children, she wasn't interested in making those same life choices. Those are my decisions that I got to make for myself. I'm proud of the life choices I've made, and it seems a shame for him to pass judgment on anyone who makes a choice to live life on their own terms. End quote. Amen, Stevie. But you know what? It sounds like Lindsay is talking about himself. Lindsay is currently going through a divorce, and Lindsay has never been alone ever since he and Stevie broke up. He's never been alone with himself. Stevie knows how to be with herself. I think that he feels alone. And I get that it's not an easy place to be, especially if you're not used to it. And the fact that he has gone through a heart surgery very recently, including having to be intubated where he lost his voice for a time. And I believe he's not fully recovered it, but mostly recovered it. But maybe he's not feeling himself due to his age. And that also must be a tough thing. I mean, I actually think that he really may be going through a really hard time, and he's just projecting it onto Stevie. He also says in the article, I'll tell you what, between the Fleetwood Mac stuff and the heart attack and the divorce, it's all been very humbling. Buckingham says now, I've never suffered for a lack of confidence and sometimes could get carried away with that in the process of leading the band. But everything has pulled me in a little bit. I'm not as aggressive a person as I was before, which is probably not a bad thing. It made me look around more and become less self-involved, hopefully. End quote. And yet, despite this assertion, Lindsay is quick to make incendiary comments about his former bandmates and associates. Especially since he's saying all this to, in his words, sell his current solo album. He says he's proud of the self-titled album, even though he knows that perhaps 1 in 10 who will pay attention to Fleetwood Mac will pay attention to it. But part of the reason he's so open about his tumultuous past few years, he says, is because he knows that the drama helps fans invest in his music. That was part of the appeal of Rumors, he says, referring to the 1977 Fleetwood Mac album that was created while the band members were in the midst of affairs, addictions, and breakups. I think there's a little element of that out there right now. But guess what? That was when you guys were in your 20s. Why are you doing that now? Have you not grown since your 20s? And I hate making that kind of argument because I totally feel like you can mess up in your 70s just as much as you can mess up in your 20s. But this mistake feels just so incredibly obvious, making exactly the same mistake again even though it made incredible music. But for one thing, it's a formula. Like you're going to follow some formula to get hits? That never works. You need to do something new and fresh, and using people in order to create hits. It's just not cool in your 70s. I don't like it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's right for him to do that? Let me know in the comments. Azoff says in a statement for the Times, I have historically declined to comment on artists, but in the case of Lindsey Buckingham, I will make an exception. In speaking with Stevie, her account of events are factual and truthful. While I understand it's challenging for Lindsay to accept his role in these matters and far easier to blame a manager, the fact remains that his actions alone are responsible for what transpired. Frankly, if I can be accused of anything, it's perhaps holding things together longer than I should have. After 2008, when Fleetwood Mac evolved with the new lineup, my continued work with the band was due entirely to the fact that I've aligned myself with Stevie Nicks in thought and purpose from the earliest of days. While financial gain was not a motivator for me, it was a delightful bonus that the band scored their highest grossing tour ever without Lindsay. That finished it. Well, the battery ran out just the right moment, I guess. I decided to do this here, to finish the video here. That was quite a video anyway. God, long video, huh? I told you it was going to be a lengthy one. But this video meant so much to me, though. More than any other video I've done before, really. Because I related to it so much. Being a woman trying to break into the music industry, I mean, Stevie seems to have really mastered that dance that women have to do. And I have so much respect for her doing it with so much grace. I don't know that I could have ever done it like that. And it's actually been too hard for me, I ended up quitting working in the music industry, especially in the production side of music. Like, I'll tell you a quick story. Back in the early 2000s, late 90s, I was trying to learn how to produce music, especially electronic music, and I was having such a hard time, learning how to do these things, from the condescending nature of the way people would treat me trying to learn, or harassment that came with it. I remember I went on this message board that was like a recording message board. I'll never forget it. I saw a post that was talking about how this producer had a bunch of women approach him trying to find out how to produce and how to create electronic music. And he said he looked at them with like such suspicion, and like they were just trying to get something from him. And he wasn't having any of it. And I was like, yeah, they're trying to learn how to make music. Exactly the reason for this message board. These are engineers and musicians exchanging information with each other so they can learn how to be better musicians and engineers. But when a woman was asking about it, all of a sudden it was monetized, or not monetized, it was like, I don't know, quid pro quo value, meaning there was like a sexual favor value to it or something. This was the thing that they were exchanging among each other for free. But I wasn't totally certain. I thought maybe I'm overreacting. So I decided to pose as just a regular boy or whatever in the chat room. And in the end, I ended up learning so much about production, and it was great. No sexual favors needed. So after that realization, I noticed a pattern. I had all these frustrating experiences over the years. I mean, like, just going to Guitar Center used to be so infuriating. It's gotten better, thankfully, but they used to talk to you so condescendingly, and like you didn't know anything. It's really annoying. Or I was in this band that would ignore my musical opinion, or they would just like roll their eyes when I bring anything up, and they would even just have like meetings without me to discuss important things. It just got to the point where I just didn't want to do it anymore. And I started liking this, But discussing this has really meant a lot to me because I really understood her story. And honestly, Stevie even barely talks about this stuff. She is more inclined to give people the benefit of the doubt, and she really thinks very highly of Lindsay, even if she can't really be around him anymore. She even sent him messages during his heart surgery ordeal. Even after everything that they've gone through, she still has feelings for him. It's too bad he doesn't have the same respect for her, I don't know about the eyebrow trick, though. I think maybe I gotta try it a little more. Maybe you guys can let me know what I'm doing wrong. Maybe I'm doing something wrong. I need to try it a few more times because I had a hard time trying to get the eyebrow powder, and even the eyebrow pen didn't work very well over the soap. So, I don't know, maybe I gotta try it a few more times to see how to do it right. Anyway, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I'll be doing these Final Friday Feud videos every last Friday of the month. Hopefully next time it'll be on time. So if you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing. And if you did like it, please consider liking the video. It really means a great deal to me. Anyway, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I hope to see you later. Bye. Popcorn Philosopher, over and out.